Welcome everyone to the PTW podcast. This is the week 6 review where, believe it or not, folks, we have gone through 6 full weeks of football already out of a 18-week season. Quick math, that leaves 12 weeks left for us to enjoy NFL football, a full 3 months of football left. I am your host, Amir, from the PTW podcast. With me, as always, is Tossie, the football Greek. And Toss, it was I think an interesting week 6, right? I think a lot of the stuff that we had anticipated, that we talked about, not only in the podcast, came to fruition, but also just the teams, again, that we talked about, the teams that we expected to make noise, those are the ones kind of rising above the rest as we move on. The games are becoming a little bit more predictable as to who's going to perform, who's not going to perform. Which shows in what our predictions were, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But
we will. Good week.
It was a good week for us prediction-wise. Now, what we're going to do in this episode, we're going to preview not only the Monday Night Football game between the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets that just ended not too long ago. In fact, we can start with that real quick and just get over that. But we'll also talk about some topics that I have put together that Tossie has not seen. So we're going to answer these questions sight unseen, no preparation whatsoever, and see how much fun we can have. But first, let's talk about the Monday Night Football game. Buffalo Bills versus the New York Jets. New York Jets firing Coach Robert Saleh, to see if it'll spark this team. They demote Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator. And it seems like whether it was the firing of Robert Saleh or it was a demotion of Nathaniel Hackett, and I would think it's the demotion of Nathaniel Hackett, that this Jets offense had some life. They looked like they were getting first downs on a regular basis. They were having no issue getting first downs, and they were moving the ball down the field pretty steadily. They had a touchdown that was called back that would have sealed the game for them. They also had 2 missed field goals, both hitting the upright, that would have sealed the game for them. So a string of plays that ended up in bad luck for them, that would have won them the game and would have tied them in for first place in the division. Instead, they go down to 2-4. Buffalo moves on to 4-2. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo kind of escaped. I mean, Josh Allen played really good in the first half. He was amazing. He was making plays. He was, extending the play and then getting out and hitting open receivers for long gains and touchdowns. So he had an awesome first half. Second half, not so much. It was really sloppy. Like the NFL refs, again, going back to my other rant, it was just flag after flag. It was like we were doing laundry out there. It was like every play, there was a yellow flag on the field in the second half. It was just insane. It was horrible to watch. They need to fire that crew because that was just terrible. They basically ruined what was turning out to be a pretty entertaining game in the first half, especially after that Hail Mary. It was so awesome to see Aaron Rodgers is the master of that, right? Alan Lazard finally catches a ball, right? He's been dropping a bunch. He's leading the NFL in drop passes. He catches this insane Hail Mary at the last second.
With the 8 seconds.
Only down 3. Exactly. Yep. So only down 3 at the half, 20-17. So after all of that domination by Buffalo and by, Josh Allen in the first half, they're only down 3. It looked like, the Jets are going to have some life in the second half. And then, like you said, they get the touchdown called back. Braylon Allen, it was a pretty weak holding call. I mean, he was already past it. It didn't affect the play at all. He's going to score there. Yeah. And then that led to the missed field goal, and then some missed field goals, some sacks, some more penalties, and it just and then that interception at the end. That was a really good interception, by the way. Mike Williams fell.
That was a gorgeous interception.
Pretty insane. I'm a little annoyed because I was playing a guy with Buffalo and I was winning by a point, and that dude had Buffalo's defense and he won our fantasy football match on that interception.
Oh no.
So brutal. By half a point.
Oh no.
So brutal.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do, man?
That's
it was fantasy football.
That's the way the fantasy football cookie crumbles.
Yeah, exactly. It crumbles pretty hard.
Buffalo moves on to 4-2, a win that I don't feel was super impressive. I think the Jets
Yeah.
really were on the same level as them throughout this entire game. Buffalo, after being very dominant the first 3 weeks of the season, last 3 weeks have looked very, very beatable. Something's got to wake that team up, in my opinion, to get them back in the conversation of AFC Championship caliber type team. I don't see it right now. I don't see it right now. And talk about the Jets. This is now 3 games where they've had bad luck, where they could have won the game. You're talking about a team that could be 5-1 and instead is 2-4. They're a couple plays away from winning the Denver game, winning the Minnesota game, and winning this Buffalo game. That's 3 games that you could have won and go to 5-1 instead of being 2-4. Right.
Hey, but Saul is the one to blame here.
100% scapegoat. 100% the scapegoat. But 100%. I do think the demotion of Nathaniel Hackett, you saw it today in the product. You saw that offense have some new life in them, man. They were running really well. The play calling was a lot better, in my opinion. It wasn't suspect. Convert some first downs. You don't have to kick those field goals. You don't get the field goal misses and that kind of stuff. You got to work on special teams a little bit. But overall, I don't think it's doom and gloom for the Jets. I think 2-4 in this division is actually not a terrible place to be in. Again, I don't see Miami doing anything crazy. The Patriots obviously not doing anything crazy. The rest of the AFC, to be honest, outside of a few teams that we'll talk about in a second, don't really scare me. So I think the Jets still are viable contenders, at least for the playoffs. So I wouldn't freak out yet if you're a New York Jets fan. Okay. So before we move forward, as always, friendly reminder to like and subscribe to us at the PTW podcast here on YouTube. We're also getting more active on our Instagram page, which is at @the_PTW_podcast. Find us there. We're also on Twitter as well, or X at the PTW podcast. Wherever you listen to our podcast, whether on Apple Music or Spotify, or Apple Podcasts and Spotify, thank you so much for listening to us, or anywhere else that you listen to our podcast. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Okay, here we go. This is the round of questions that I have put together that Tossie has not seen. And we talked about the upper echelon teams in the AFC. Okay, 3 teams from the AFC had big wins this past week. Well, no, Kansas City was actually on a bye. So 2 of these teams had big wins, but I'm going to include the Chiefs because they're still undefeated. No one has beaten them yet. But out of the Texans, the Ravens, and the Chiefs, who is the best team in the AFC at the moment? The Ravens continue to win. They beat a very game Washington Commanders over the week. And the Texans absolutely crushed the Patriots in Foxborough, 41-21. Where are you leaning here?
A week ago, I would have probably said the Chiefs, but that was only because of their record. I feel like they've gotten a lot of lucky breaks. You know what? I am going to change it up, and I'm going to say my pick to go to the Super Bowl this year is the team right now that's the best team in the AFC, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. So I think at this moment, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Baltimore D, getting it done. They played a lot better against the Commanders. They slowed down Jaden Daniels. They had, we picked him. We said Jaden Daniels was gonna, it was kind of like a wake up game, right, for him. It's kind of like a gut check game, a heat check game, as you will. And Baltimore came out and they did their thing, and they beat them pretty handily. So I'm gonna say right now, Baltimore is the best team in the AFC. And then, between the Texans and the Chiefs, it's pretty close, but I'll still give the edge to the Chiefs. They're 5-0. They're coming off, they're defending champs. Texans still have to prove it to me, but I still believe in the Texans getting the number 1 seed in the AFC. That's still on the table, and I still think that's how it's going to play out. I just think the Ravens are going to end up winning and going to the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. Honorable mention to the Steelers. I didn't include them in this conversation because they beat the Raiders. And granted, yeah, the Texans beat the Patriots, but the Texans, I think, over the season have just shown you that they're the better team, that they're more put together team. I think right now, Texans versus Steelers, I think Texans win that game handily.
You know, an interesting thing about it is like Joe Mixon makes a big deal in their offense, like a big difference too. Like, you know, he was back this week, huge game, 2 touchdowns, you know, like had, you know, a really good fantasy game if you have him fantasy. So, you know, I think he makes a big, because their running game was really non-existent without him. And then he comes back and he healthy again. And it makes them more dynamic on offense. They got a little bit more options, even though with the loss of Nico Collins, we saw Tank Dell step up, got a touchdown like we talked about. So, you know, it's kind of like some plug and play, some, you know, moving of the chess pieces as you will, but Texans still were strong and, you know, obviously beating up on a pretty crappy Patriots team.
All right, cool. I think I agree with you. I think right now the Ravens are the best of the 3, even with the Chiefs being at 5-0. I think I'm a big fan of momentum, and right now the Ravens' momentum is next level. Derrick Henry looks like the offseason signing of the year. It looks like they stole him from everyone else in that league. It's just it's incredible, right? Like you again, we talked about this last week with DeAndre Hopkins being on the Tennessee Titans and being on a team that would be the right fit, and how much better that person would be. Derrick Henry was already a baller, but now you put him on a team like the freaking Baltimore Ravens, and lo and behold, just
there you go.
Glowing, right? Okay.
Very similar to what McCaffrey a couple of years ago come to the 100% too, right?
1,000%.
So
1,000%, the right situation, right?
Yeah.
All right, my friend. True or false? We're gonna hop onto the other side of the NFL now, in the NFC.
All right.
Even without Aiden Hutchinson, Detroit is still the king of the NFC.
Wow, Detroit just embarrassed the Cowboys at home. I mean, Cowboys are at home in Jerry World, and they got crushed. They got absolutely demolished. And as a Niners fan, there's no better feeling to watch the Cowboys get crushed, because, you know, like Jerry Jones, man, that guy, you know, he's got to give up a little power, man. He's paid to Dak $60 million to play quarterback like that. That's pretty terrible. So, you know, honestly, going to Detroit, though, huge loss. I mean, that was gruesome. I mean, you saw
47-9.
Yeah. I mean,
47-9.
That was gruesome too. I'm talking about that Aiden Hutchinson.
Oh, the Aiden Hutchinson injury. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, was very gruesome. Yes,
his leg basically snapped in half.
Yeah,
it was so bad to watch.
Yeah.
So wishing him a recovery. Even though I'm not really a Detroit fan, obviously it's a Niners fan, but you know, you never want to see someone get hurt, especially a player at that caliber and such a gruesome injury. Hopefully, it gets back to, you know, next year, you know, good recovery, and he gets back to playing the, you know, Pro Bowl caliber defense that he had been at this point in the season. But Detroit's good, man, and they got a good offense, and they got that running game, and they got those 2 running backs, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, Jared Goff, he's a serviceable quarterback. He's not like a great quarterback, but he's good. He's a good quarterback. He can lead their offense. He makes the right plays. He makes the throws, and you know, they just crushed the Cowboys. And you know, that was a big statement game after losing that game last year to them on that kind of like that, what was that not calling the right, you know, like guy eligible, and then they did the penalty, and then they didn't win, and they tried to go for it again, and it was just, I think they were just trying to prove a point, like we are way better than these guys, and they just stomped them. It was like I said, beautiful to watch.
By the way,
I think
just to push back on the narrative that Jared Goff is a serviceable quarterback. Jared Goff in this game, 18 of 25, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a perfect quarterback rating of 153.8.
Yeah, I had a good
so
game.
Just an FYI. Just an FYI.
You know, you got to think about
as a serviceable quarterback.
I agree. But you got to, you know, Cowboys defense is really beat
well. They're
missing
down Micah Parsons, exactly,
and DeMarcus Lawrence. So like they don't really have much of a defense right now. So I mean, but that was still a great game. You know, like there's still NFL players. They're still out there competing, and it was embarrassing to watch the Cowboys come out and just get basically taken to the shed. So,
yeah,
I think Detroit, they're bullies. They've been bullying people. They like to run the ball. That's what their MO is. They're kind of like their head coach. He's just a big kind of wild animal man. Just like screaming and talking about banging peoples and doing knuckles and whatever. Whatever
biting
he's
off
talking
kneecaps.
about. Yeah, biting kneecaps,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
When I say biting knuckles, whatever. He's biting stuff. Like he's a crazy man out there. So, but anyway, he's kind of like he takes some gambles. They really should have beat the Niners. Like they shouldn't have gone for it on these 4. They should have took the points. Like they should have went for it. They should have done these things right in that NFC Championship game that they didn't. They ended up like losing. But this year they're coming out with a vengeance, playing really well. They're going to be there. They're my pick to win the North, and they'll probably be in the championship game. Come January, right? So they're a really strong team again this year.
Detroit
in a tough
has in a very tough,
division.
Very tough division. Yeah, Detroit has heart, right? And I think it starts with Dan Campbell, a guy who I had the pleasure of seeing coach as an interim coach in Miami many, many years ago, someone that I really wish that the team had taken a chance on. But historically in the NFL, most teams don't keep their interim coaches, the Raiders being the rare exception where they kept, I don't know the guy's name. Thank you. As the current coach this year. It's very rare that an interim coach takes over and then continues in year 2 or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I saw it back when, Coach Campbell coached the Dolphins and led them, I believe, to like a 4-6 record or something like that. After Joe Philbin got fired, he absolutely amazing coach, and you could really see the players love to play not only for him but just for the team. And again, like to me, it goes back to I've talked about momentum for the Ravens. For me, it's like there's heart in this Detroit team, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of harkens back to like, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged New Orleans, the heart that the New Orleans Saints had. And that's the year that they went off and won the Super Bowl. And so that there's something I think to be said about this Detroit team in a city that's always been perennial. I don't want to say losers, but they've never been great. For them to now be maybe, and possibly the best team in the NFC right now, and that's including the Minnesota Vikings, right? So we'll see. But right now, losing Aiden Hutchison is a big blow. But they're a tough team, man. They're a very tough team.
I mean, that's gonna hurt their run defense. I mean, their defense for sure. But I think their offense still can bully people with their run game, and
for sure,
quick passes to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. They're still going to be producing at a high level on offense. So I still think they'll be able to continue to win and beat up on some teams here moving forward.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. In the spirit of one of my favorite football podcasts, I talk about Rich Eisen a lot on this podcast. He has something called Overreaction Monday, which is one of my favorite things to watch. We're going to do one topic about overreaction. We're going to overreact on a topic, just kind of borrowing from that format just for a second here. But I'm going to give you a statement. You tell me if it's if I'm overreacting or if you don't think it's an overreaction.
All right.
After their win on Sunday Night Football, the Bengals are back. They're back, baby. Joe Burrow looks good. They got the receivers.
Yeah,
they got their groove. They beat a decent Giants team. The Giants are nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, that division's open, in my opinion, by the way.
Yeah. I still think that division's tough. I mean, minus Cleveland. Cleveland just stinks this year. Deshaun Watson. Yeah. But between the Steelers and the Ravens, it's going to be tough for the Bengals to climb back into that division race. So I don't think they're back, but I think they're like I said, they're going to finish around 9-7 ish around there. We kind of talked about this, right? Like last week, I want to say, like we kind of looked at their schedule. I think they're not quite back, but they're still going to compete. Like, it's not like they're going to be like the top seed in, the AFC at this point. They only got 2 wins. So, they'll get to 9-7, I think, or 9-8 essentially, possibly 10-7 if they're, if they really keep it going. But I don't think they're gonna be.
I don't know,
just
man.
Like go undefeated the rest of the way.
Next week they play a Cleveland Browns team that really is struggling.
Yeah, they'll get another win next week. Yeah,
they'll go to 3-4.
3-4 next week. Yeah, so yeah, they're on their way. But then they got some other tough matchups, and they got to play their division. Pittsburgh, and
they host the Eagles after that. They might that's probably a win as well. So you never know. In 2 weeks, we could be talking about a 500 team that's getting their mojo back.
You might be right on this one.
The Jaguars lost pretty bad to the Chicago Bears at home. Oh no, on the road to Chicago in London. The Jaguars are going to stay in London and host the New England Patriots in Week 7. The Jaguars should be the second team to fire their coach midseason if they lose against the Patriots.
Oh, if they lose against the Patriots, he's fired for sure.
He's gone, I think.
In my mind. Yeah.
I think he's gone.
But they're not going to lose against the Patriots.
Are you sure?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The Patriots just scored 21 points on the Houston Texans, bro.
Yeah, Drake May looked pretty good. He looked pretty legit.
Looks good.
He looks good. Their run game stunk. I stuck Antonio Gibson in my lineup, and that was a waste. He had like 13 carries and had like 19 yards. Like, what the heck? Dude, how can you average like less than 2 yards a carry, bro? Like 13 carries and 19 yards. Like, how bad do you have to be? Like, you literally have to like just run into somebody when you get the ball every time to do that. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
It's insane. Anyways, but yeah, I don't think they're going to lose to the Patriots. They're going to win. They're going to get their second win. I thought they were going to get their second win this week, but they're going to get their second win this week. Doug Pederson is safe for another week, but the wheels are pretty much falling off there. They've already started trading players. I want to say they traded away defensive linemen to Seattle. So they're starting to kind of looking to clean house, trying to get off some contracts. Yeah, their season is pretty much done. Like they know they're not going to catch the Texans in the division. They're just not good enough.
No.
Yeah.
No, in my opinion, even if they don't make this move, Doug Pederson is gone after this season.
Yeah, after the season for sure. He's done.
But if they do lose both games in London, they've already lost one. They lose the second one against the Patriots. I don't think he survives.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
And not to say that I'm like advocating for someone to get fired, but it's just, hey, the Jets got the ball rolling with Robert Saleh.
Let's just fire our coach now.
Teams are like, we can do that now? Okay, maybe we could do that now.
It's pretty unconventional in the NFL. Usually you let it play off and you fire him in the offseason. But 5 games in, man, Robert Saleh is done.
And it might be six games in for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, like we alluded to at the beginning of the podcast, we I wish we bet some money this week because we got I think together there was let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 14 games this past week. Of the 14, you and I correctly predicted 11 of them.
Yeah,
which is
that's against the spread.
That's against the spread. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. We had a disagreement on the Jacksonville-Chicago game. I picked Chicago. You picked Jacksonville.
So
and we had a disagreement.
Yeah.
I did. But then we had a disagreement on the Green Bay-Arizona game. You picked Green Bay. I picked Arizona.
Why would you pick Arizona there?
It's so.
I told you that they.
It's funny. It's funny.
Lucky.
both scores are so similar too. Chicago 35-16 against Jacksonville. Green Bay 34-13 against Arizona. Like the scores are so similar in these two games. But those are the two that we disagreed on. And then the one game we got wrong is that we picked the New York Jets to defeat the Buffalo Bills.
Freaking refs.
To be fair,
stop throwing laundry.
You make those 2 field goals, the Jets win the game. We could have theoretically had 12 of 14. We had 11 of 14. Well, you had 12 of 14. I had 12 of 14.
Yeah,
we just had one different game.
But the only game that we didn't get against the spread, real quick, was the Eagles game. We picked the Eagles to beat the Browns. They didn't cover, but whatever. We still picked the Eagles to win.
It was minus. Yeah, it was 7.5, and Eagles only won by 4. Yeah. But everything else
terrible.
Everything else we got.
Getting back to the Eagles, what do you think about Nick Sirianni and how he's behaving? I mean, that guy's such a clown, isn't he?
We talked about this in the previous episode. I don't think Nick Sirianni is a very good coach to begin with. Period.
No.
And Nick Sirianni's attitude, for lack of a better word, is it's so immature to me. It's a guy who kept getting his Legos stolen from him when he was a kid, and somehow has worked his way up to being an NFL head coach. And listen, the first few years you couldn't deny, right? They were a good team, got to the Super Bowl, almost won that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But there's just the luster is gone, I think, in that city with that organization at the moment. And
I mean, he's yelling at his own fans,
I don't like. He's just. I think there's a point where you just need to grow up, right? Yeah. I think like coaches like Rex Ryan learned this lesson, right? Like when Rex got hired for the New York Jets, like his first press conference was like, "Oh, I'm not going to kiss Bill Belichick's rings, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that." Blah blah blah. And to his credit, made the Jets a very relevant franchise. Took them to the AFC Championship. I want to say at least 2 years in a row. They went to the AFC Championship game with Mark Sanchez, almost got to Super Bowl, didn't quite get there, and then they couldn't replicate it. But fumble, they couldn't replicate it, and then he moves on to the Bills, and it's just not the same. And I think there's a lesson in humility there. There's a lesson in not thinking that your shit doesn't stink, right?
Exactly.
That's my opinion of Nick Sirianni. I think it's one of those things that I'm experiencing with my coach right now for the Dolphins. We're like, and I'm not saying Mike McDaniel has the personality of Nick Sirianni, anything far from it. But at the same time, being smart enough to know that the way that you are approaching, the way that you coach and the way that you game plan is just not working anymore.
Yeah.
And being smart enough to know that I need to change things up, and also be smart enough to know that you are not the smartest person in the room, man. There's always someone that's smarter than you that you need to shut up and listen to and be like, maybe I could take something from this person and apply it to what we're trying to do here. Yeah. I've never liked Nick Sirianni because his attitude just throws me off from day one. I was never a fan.
Well, and then he brought his kids to the press conference, and they couldn't, they kind
of like a shield. Yeah. Like you can't, so
he's using his kids to shield him from the, getting the hard questions asked. So, but guys, he's a clown. Whatever. Moving on.
Yeah.
Eagles aren't that good anymore. Jalen Hurts is not the same. He's not doing the same things that he did when he was playing, led him to Super Bowl. He's definitely something wrong with him. He's not throwing the ball well anymore. He's not really running the ball well anymore. There's just something off with Jalen Hurts too. So, I don't think the Eagles are much of a contender at this point anymore.
No, I would agree with that 100%. I think another thing that I want to just take away from this week, because again, overall this week, again, no surprises per se. 2 games that I do want to talk about, and funny enough, both games that took place with teams that were in the NFC South, is the Atlanta Falcons, and granted, it's against Carolina.
Yeah.
But talk about a team that looked one way in week 1.
Yeah.
And looks completely like a brand new, amazing,
they really do.
Upper echelon team weeks 2 and on. These dudes look for real. Atlanta looks great.
Yeah. I mean, they're running all over Carolina. I mean, Kirk Cousins didn't really, coming off his enormous game the week before where he threw the ball 70 plus times. This game, he didn't have to throw the ball at all. They just ran right down their throats. And so showing that they can be multidimensional on offense, they could win in different ways. So that's for a good team, that's a good box to check, right? And then, of course, doing against the division, rival, they hand them an easy defeat that, beside it is Carolina, I know, but still they still won the game handily. And then, you're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the other side, right?
Tampa Bay and New Orleans. I mean, listen to this box score real quick, because the final score is 51-27. Okay. So let's just get that out of the way. Tampa Bay pretty much owns New Orleans. But what's hilarious about this box score is that at the end of the first, the score was 17-0. At the end of the second, the score was 27-24 New Orleans. New Orleans scored all 27 of their points in the second quarter.
Crazy.
And then shut out the rest of the game while Tampa Bay scores another 27 points to make it 51-27.
Yeah.
I mean, at halftime, this game looked insane. And then Tampa just comes in the second half and waltzes away with this.
You.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Just cut it off right there. And
jeez, man.
Baker Mayfield's playing really well. There was a little scary. He got injured, but then he still stayed in the game. Baker's tough, man. He got crunched and he stayed in the game, and they put on an absolute show.
He's a very durable quarterback. Yeah.
Very durable. And then the Bucky Irving, he came, he was the lead back, Rashad White was hurt, did not play in this game. And like I told you a couple weeks back, you got to get that Bucky Irving on your fantasy team, because he's obviously the man now. And, he had a big game.
Him and Sean Tucker looks like, because Sean Tucker also had a big game.
Running back, I was going to say Sean Tucker out of nowhere, as a backup. So it seems like Tampa Bay's offense is viable for two running backs, obviously, but Sean Tucker with an enormous game. He had like almost 40 points in fantasy. So it was just one of those crazy games where they were just running all over him. They were passing on Chris Godwin with an enormous game. It was just Tampa Bay's offense was on fire. And we kind of talked about New Orleans defense like not being that great anymore. And look, there it was, right? We talked about that in our preview. We're like, they're going to score points. Tampa's going to score points. We didn't know about Spencer Rattler. They ended up scoring a decent amount of points, but one of it was on special teams, and then I think they even had a defensive score. So it wasn't all on the offense really, but they still put up points with him, which is promising. Kamara had a rushing touchdown. I think he had one passing touchdown. Spencer Rattler did, but it was a decent debut. I mean, he had the game. They were in it at halftime, right? And then they ended up just getting crushed in the second half.
Yep.
Yeah.
New Orleans, man, talk about a team you feel kind of bad for. They start the season off 2-0, beating a pretty bad Carolina team and what's becoming a not so great Dallas team. And then you barely lose to the Eagles, barely lose to the Falcons. And then, decent game against Kansas City, and then you get blown out against Tampa. You lose 4 games in a row after starting 2-0.
Yeah.
Which is not great.
Fighting with Carolina for the worst team in that division at this point, I think. So, especially while Derek Carr's out. You mentioned the Cowboys. I want to go back to their coach, Mike McCarthy.
Yep.
Another guy on the hot seat.
Oh, 100%.
He might not make it. They're going on a bye after next week. Or, this week they're on bye. They're on bye this week, and then they're
on a bye this week. Yep.
Then they play the Niners. And I don't know if they get crushed by the Niners again, Mike McCarthy might be out as head coach. I know Jerry Jones is kind of like trying to. They asked him about it today, and he was kind of really defensive. He said, like, you don't think I'm stupid. You don't think I'm going to answer this question. But in a way, he kind of answered it the way he kind of was so defensive about it. So it's definitely, I think it's on the table. Dallas underperforming and just getting crushed. I could see him also getting fired, in season potentially. So Mike McCarthy, Doug Pederson, probably 2 guys that are really on the hot seat right now. If we go to the NFL coaches,
2 former Super Bowl winning coaches as well.
Yeah,
that's the funny part, right?
Crazy how the tides turn. NFL, not for long, buddy.
Definitely not for long. So week 6 was a fun week. I think we saw some great games. Your Niners got a nice, much needed division win on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
And I got to take a break this week. Now I'm entering back into my stress zone as the Dolphins play the Colts this week.
Yeah.
With Mike McDaniel saying maybe Tua plays in 2024. Maybe he doesn't play in 2024.
But he's not playing this week.
Well, duh, because he's on IR.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like one of the most clickbait titles I've ever seen in my life. It's like, oh, well, he's not playing this week. It's like, he can't play this week. He's on IR.
Yeah.
They're on IR. Or he's still on IR because the bye week doesn't count.
Exactly.
Towards the four games that he has to sit out. Very, very, very surprised if Tua does not play against the Arizona Cardinals in week 8. It'll be a very big surprise because all signs point to that he will.
Yes, I agree.
Keep saying over and over again that he's had no symptoms for weeks. Apparently, if he didn't go on IR, he could have been playing this, last week or the week before. Who knows, right? So
and
a lot of
my prediction for that game is too, when he comes back, Tua is gonna have a huge game, like a huge game. Watch, like 4 touchdowns.
I'm glad.
A couple touchdowns. It's gonna be like all of a sudden everyone's like, "Whoa!" You know what I mean? I could just see it right now. I already know it. I already know it's gonna play out.
That's so funny that I'm the Dolphins fan, and like I have to. You're the one that has to convince me. Like I have to be like, I don't know if that's gonna happen. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Dude, I'm telling you, bro. Just watch week 8, baby. 4 touchdowns, 350 yards. Tyreek Hill 2 touchdowns. Let's go. That's it.
Tyreek Hill, man. Tyreek Hill needs something, bro. He needs something. He's going to go from being number 1 on the NFL top 100 list to not being on the list at all next year if the season continues the way it is.
Goes to show you, it's maybe not all him. He definitely
that's week 6. Hopefully it was a good week for you. Hopefully you won some bets. You won some games in fantasy. Your team won in real life, all that kind of stuff. And as always, if you are liking what you are listening to, either on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to like and subscribe to us on the PTW podcast. We are going to end this episode with a preview of the Thursday night game coming up in a few days. The Denver Broncos, who very badly need a win.
Yeah.
Versus the New Orleans Saints, who very badly need a win.
This is ugly.
Who gets the much needed win? Hey, it's not a division game. Check that out.
It's not.
It's not a division game.
This is a random ass Thursday night game. Denver, Patrick Surtain went out like literally on the first drive. He had a concussion, and then it was all downhill for them. Against the Chargers, essentially, for their defense. Like, when you take away one of the best cornerback in the league, it's going to affect your defense. So let's see if he plays. Like, he may or may not play. It's a short week. He's coming off a concussion. It's going to be hard for him to pass the concussion protocol and play. So, but then on the New Orleans side, Kamar's beat up, Carr's beat up, he's probably not going to play again. We're looking at Spencer Rattler. This is a very tough game to predict. But I'm going to try to predict it, and I'm going to say, who's the home team? New Orleans?
New Orleans.
I'm going to say the home team gets the victory here. New Orleans
I think
wins
so too.
The game.
I think
that's
so too.
my prediction.
Yeah.
The spread is probably it's definitely like 3 points. I bet
it's -1.5 Denver.
-1.5. Wow.
-1.5.
New Orleans all the way. That for me, that's my bet, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
There's not much going on there. Bo Nix is playing a little bit better. Cortland Sutton is his number 1 wide receiver. He had a touchdown again. He's getting a lot of targets. Like in fantasy, I think he's a good play. Anything else as far as the preview goes that you got, Amir? But I think New Orleans is still going to win this game. I
think New Orleans will win this game. I think Denver is figuring it out, but I don't think Patrick Surtain comes back for this game.
Yeah.
So that'll be a huge loss just because it's a Thursday night game. I just don't think there's enough time for him to clear concussion protocol. Bo Nix, while looking better and better every week, I don't think he's there yet to put the entire team on his shoulders to win a game on the road in a short week. Hence, picking the New Orleans Saints to get out of their slump, to go to 3-4, break that 4-game losing streak. And then we'll have a fun new slate of games to talk about in our next episode.
We will.
Thursday night.
After the game. We'll see how this plays out.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us here on the PTW podcast. It has been a great pleasure talking to you all about this wonderful game that we call football. As a reminder, we are covering every single week of the NFL, 2 episodes a week, one on Monday, one on Thursday, after the Monday night game and after the Thursday night game. On the Thursday episode, we will preview the upcoming slate of games that happen on Sunday and on Monday. And on the Monday episodes, we talk about everything that just happened and we preview the upcoming Thursday night games. So that's kind of how it works. Again, friendly reminder to like and subscribe to the PTW podcast here on YouTube and to also follow us on Instagram at @the_PTW_podcast, and also find us on X/Twitter, wherever you find your social media. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to follow us so that you are up to date whenever we drop a new episode. Until next time, my name is Amir from the PTW podcast. This is Tossing the Football Greek. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.
Let's go. Week 7.